Bethesda needs to do better. From Maddie of all people possible also. Are people finally waking up to the fact that modern Bethesda is completely clueless, completely lost, and completely talentless? Are people, are normies finally understanding that things previously were actually objectively better than they are now? That the slop that they are serving, and I'm not even talking about Bethesda alone, okay? Ubisoft, BioWare, Blizzard, all of these companies can get a little bit of that. Is it finally time for people to wake up and understand that it's over? The good days are gone for these companies.
Today, we're sitting down once more to talk about Bethesda. However, this angle is a little bit different because the dust has settled a bit since Oblivion Remastered has released. It was a very exciting launch. There was one video I made, though, in that launch week talking about how there were some issues. And out of all the videos I've posted on Oblivion Remastered,
I've watched that. I don't remember anything about it. It was pretty dull, as always.
since it first leaked, that was our most disliked one. People did not like me raining on the parade a little bit there. And I get it. That's usually not my style. So I do what I usually do. I backed up a little bit. I was like, all right, we'll wait for people to settle. And Digital Foundry put out a very interesting.
Wait. Is his golden take about this? Uh, I'm currently experiencing a lot of audience capture. I'm gonna wait until the dust settles so my audience is fine with that. Bro, like, come on, okay? Audience capture is a horrible thing. It really is. I think that's one of the worst things in YouTube that can happen because that means that you're forced to talk about things that you don't want to talk. It suddenly all becomes pretty bad. So, damn, that's kind of almost sad, you know?
Video highlighting major issues on consoles for Oblivion. Now, as someone who's covered Bethesda for a very
Yeah, imagine a console game having issues running a game. Who would have expected that?
long time, adamantly so, there is a new sort of approach to their content
Is the Xbox fridge not running Skyrim properly anymore? I don't know.
in the last year that I'm not a fan of. It's something I actually was DMing Juicehead about a few weeks ago when we were talking about the Fallout 4 next gen update. Bethesda has adopted a sort of approach of just release it and move on. And they're not giving themselves either enough time or budget or resources or
Bethesda is adopting this because they want to distance themselves from all the failures. And again, we have Starfield, Bethesda's return to form, return to glory, and everyone hates Starfield. Like there is no one you can find that likes Starfield almost, okay? And anyone who says in the comments, "I like Starfield," press X to doubt. Press X to doubt a lot. Harder. Press it harder, in fact. And other than that, there's the Oblivion Remastered that Bethesda didn't do anything really in. They just added body type A and body type B, and everyone hated that. They can't claim any good stuff, honestly, about the remake. And people are seeing the remake, and as I have been saying for a while, they are thinking, wait a minute. So this is not the case that everything old is just better because you thought like that when you were a kid. This is objectively better. People are flocking to this old game because it now looks better and it plays still better than everything Bethesda has. This is insanity.
what have you to fix up some of the messes that they create. Because we're not just looking at Oblivion Remastered and assessing some of the issues with that game, but we're also looking at Fallout 4's next gen update and even Starfield. Again, this is all across like the last year where Bethesda has made problems for themselves. And in some cases, like there's one instance I'll highlight with Starfield where they did go ahead and fix that and make a bit of a change. At the same time, though, there are other problems with the game that are now popping up that Bethesda is
Oh, by the way, I just saw this on X. So, you know how Starfield had the issue where a random meteor just followed your spaceship no matter what you did, and that couldn't be fixed? And then Bethesda claimed it fixed it. And then everyone was like, nope, it's still there. It's fixed for literally no one. Classic Bethesda claims they fixed something, doesn't actually do it. It's actually even sadder if they legitimately thought that they fixed it, but actually it doesn't work for anyone. Then they fixed it the second time. This time it like works for 10% of the people. that it was a problem for. And then they fixed it the third time, and no one even cares about commenting on this anymore, and no one knows if the problem's actually fixed at this point. And Bethesda put out a patch for Oblivion, and that patch added that a random Minotaur King was gonna be just randomly following you. You can't kill it, you can't do anything with it, but there's just a random Minotaur King just in your face following you. Maybe that was a meme, but if that's a meme, that is on point. So if that's true, that is hilarious.
Still kind of like not really saying much on, and that's been the case for a lot of their releases over the last year, and it feels a little bit like they're leaning into the launch hype to cover up problems with the game because people are just excited to get that thing. And in the case of Oblivion Remastered, what I will be visiting as a topic, and I know 2020 hindsight, but the shadow drop was amazing, it was exciting, but there was no real timetable outside of just knowing we had the Oblivion Remaster over on the FTC documents that leaked. But otherwise, I don't see a reason why Bethesda and Virtuos couldn't have held on to this for just a little bit longer, even a few months, to get a couple of patches into it, get it fixed up so that it's not having the sort of poor performance issues it's having right now out the gate. So we're going to talk about all of that, ladies and gentlemen. If you're new here and you're into what's going on with Bethesda, you're in the right place. Do consider subscribing. Let's open up with Oblivion Remastered because that is the most relevant. It's still just a few weeks out now. And we know that Virtuos is collecting feedback for what they can do to help the game out, not just in the terms of like, hey, performance fixes, but it seems they're even considering like content and feature addition. So we'll see what that ends up being. Of course, that's very exciting, but I think they need to just patch up the general framework of the game so it's stable. But Digital Foundry did a very extensive breakdown on Oblivion Remastered for consoles. And this was something that I warned people about heading into the release of Oblivion Remastered, when the rumor was that it was going to be this hybrid between Unreal Engine 5 and Bethesda Game Studios jank, and the way that games are made on Unreal Engine 5, again, I don't really fully blame the engine, but rather how developers approach it, that I think that was going to be a problem from the get-go, and I warned people about that. I was like, this doesn't sound like a pretty happy marriage that's about to be made here. But nonetheless, we see the results of it. Digital Foundry puts out a video, and they break down a couple of things that I thought were worth pointing out to more of you out there. One of them is that on consoles, it doesn't matter where you play. It could be base PS5, PS5 Pro, it could be Series X and S. It doesn't matter where. The more you play, the worse this thing gets. As you log more...
Don't we already know this, by the way? I think there's like a million videos explaining why this happens. And yes, the short answer is Bethesda is incompetent. That's why it happens.
time into the game, your frame rate gets worse, and even reloading saves is going to result in crashes. And this is something that I've been playing on PC, but I've had a lot of issues with Oblivion Remastered, is just the stability of it all. Is I'm entering new areas or engaging in combat and it crashes multiple times. It's part of the reason that my review, if you will, for the game has taken some time, because I'm like, man, I'm sort of holding out for a patch at this point, because it's just like I keep having my fun times interrupted. But one thing they did note in the review over on Digital Foundry was that, you know, this isn't going to be consistent for everyone just because it depends on how much time you're playing per session. Still, the reality is that there is a pretty concerning performance issue here tied to your play clock.
Oh, that was bad. Did you see that 30 FPS drop? Oof.
And that these hitches that we're all experiencing, whether you're on PC or console, are experienced primarily in the open world. And even if you want to use the PS5 Pro as like the de facto powerful console, it's dropping below
you can see the stutter.
30 FPS with some of those hitches. So, like, power...
The FPS drop doesn't even matter. It's the stutter. If someone asks me what's more important, FPS or stuttering, it's stuttering. Okay? If a game stutters, I'm out. I am fucking out. Okay? 30 FPS, not the greatest, but it's fine. Okay? I'll live. But stuttering? Oh no! Oh no! 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 The closest kindergarten should be on fucking red alert if my game stutters. Okay? I'm not saying I have a Punisher T-shirt. But goddamn, that kindergarten better have protection, because I'm mad. That was a joke, YouTube. Please don't.
Power matters very little here. You could have a beefy rig, as I talked about, like when I was trying to play this thing on ultra. I have a really strong rig. Doesn't matter. The thing just starts stuttering like mad. This game needs some serious performance improvements, I think, to stabilize itself on the market. It's great. It's done well. The launch was really exciting, as I talked about in
Plays Bethesda games, thinks that having a powerful computer is going to save you from Bethesda being incompetent. The irony.
a previous video. Like, I think gaming needed that combined with Claire Obscure to be reminded, like, hey, $50 games
Boom.
can still happen, and they're still going to be excellent. I think Oblivion Remastered challenges the norms and a
God, come on. I can't wait. Come on, give me those $80 games. I want to see them. I want to see this industry burn to the fucking ground because it deserves it. I want all these shitty AAA companies just to be ruined. I can't wait. I can't wait. The downfall of Blizzard, I've been waiting for years at this point. Oh, I'm so excited. I am so pumped up.
lot of ways where it makes what's happening here a little bit understandable. But the reason I want to kind of be on Bethesda's ass a bit when this sort of stuff is happening is because we know they're going to do more remasters. Even if the FTC leak didn't show Fallout 3 Remaster, you look at the money that they're making off of Oblivion, it's like they're going to do more. It's just such an obvious business tactic there. It's good for Microsoft, good for Xbox, good for Bethesda. It's easy money. So if they're going to keep doing this and they're going to keep using this style, they need to make sure the next one, if they plan to shadow drop it especially, is a lot more stable. And if that means, as much as I know we all get eager, and it's easy to say now in this kind of moment of like, all right, we need to fix this, but as eager as we get, and I know Bethesda gets eager, like they want to make us excited. It results in more money, but it's also fun for them.
Dude, Bethesda is not excited, okay? Todd Howard is probably waking up every night in a panic attack because people are slowly waking up to the fact that he's an idiot. That modern day Bethesda is trash. And Emil, who's probably, literally there right beside him in bed, is like, holy, no, Todd, no, don't fire me. And Todd's like, I'm gonna fire you. But then they don't. They never do. And then they make tweets. They make a bunch of tweets about how they're the smartest people in the world and everyone should bow down to them. It's really bad, okay? And remember, Todd Howard is 5'2". He is below a manlet.
Look, at the end of the day, this sort of stuff cannot continue to happen because it's one thing if it's a one-off. That's me kind of being a hard ass in this instance. But as someone who's extensively covered their stuff, yeah, this last year has been a little rough for the release of anything new, whether it be a next-gen update or a full-on release for Bethesda Game Studios. And not just in like quality and how you feel about the game. I'm just talking about like the actual...
Please, Maddie, tell us once again how Indiana Jones was a success.
stability of things. So let's shift topics a little bit here and look at Fallout 4's next-gen update, specifically on PC.
Beautiful,
it's a little bit of a reverse situation from what's happening with Oblivion Remastered, where Oblivion Remastered is having a lot of issues on consoles and PCs are a little more hit or miss, whereas Fallout 4's next-gen update is pretty good on consoles. Like, console players have not had many issues to report, all things considered, outside of like that initial launch window where you'd use like those Creation Club weapons and they just shoot out red exclamation points. We all had that. But otherwise, it was on PC that it got significantly worse. And I'm not talking from the like modder-friendly perspective. Of course, with Skyrim, we've been through this multiple times with all the new SKUs of Skyrim. Modders had to update ancient archive mods if they were still around working on them to make sure they were compatible with these new versions of Skyrim. So this was already expected when they announced the Fallout 4 Next Gen update, but I think the biggest problem with Fallout 4's Next Gen update is it's nuked PCs so bad that as I showed in my videos, the load times are awful. It doesn't really look much better. It crashes a lot more. It stutters a lot more.
So Bethesda, this regard is exactly like Blizzard, and it's effectively like this. Historically, people have begged these companies to release a game and then never touch it again because they ruin everything every time that they touch it. More Bethesda than Blizzard, but Blizzard has a very interesting history of this.
It's really bad on PC. And what's really interesting about all of this is that one of the most popular mods for Fallout 4 now is a rollback mod that puts you at the older version of Fallout 4, which is much more stable. And we're talking about a game that was like, how old at the top of last year? We're talking like 9 years old, Fallout 4 was. And it comes around, and again, I feel old. We talked about it earlier this year. Fallout 4 is going to be 10 years old this year. But This is a game that is going to be 10 years old and it's running worse than it ever has. And look, I admit and understand that like I am more patient than I think the average consumer is. Maybe sometimes I'm a little too patient. I can admit that about myself. But I really don't think it's one of those, oh, sorry, mistakes happen or shit happens when you break a version of your own game and then pretty swiftly abandon
This is 76? No. This is Fallout 4.
it. Like, again, Fallout 4 on PC is still pretty horrendous in comparison
The
to
fuck is this?
where it once
Oh, right.
was, which, you know, it's Bethesda Game Studios game on PC, so it has its issues, but it was definitely more stable. And so I just think when you introduce that problem,
God, the dead claws. They just look like overgrown lizards, and they're not even in the slightest scary. It's not like in the old Fallouts when you were like, oh, that's a dead claw. Well, I can ambush it, and you're dead. It sprinted on you, it leaped on you, and it sliced you to goddamn fucking ribbons.
you have to be considerate of the community because a lot of people play your games for the mods. Like, it's not even about the vanilla content. It's like people like Fallout 4 mods. And when you bring in a new patch, you're creating work not just for yourselves, of course, but you're creating work for your entire community. And when you're not making it worthwhile and then not
The last time Bethesda cared about the community was never.
fixing that issue, that's where it becomes a problem. And I could just see a world where Bethesda does like another big patch for the 10-year anniversary of Fallout 4 this year and hopefully fixes some of the problems they have here, but also adds like more little celebratory content. Again, we have the Fallout Day stream this year, so I could see between the 10th anniversary of Fallout 4, Season 2 dropping at the end of this year, there's a lot of things that could be happening in the Fallout franchise that could synchronize pretty well. So I imagine we'll go the full stretch of this year without hearing any kind of fixes about Fallout 4 on PC. But this is, to me, one of the most under-discussed components. Like, I do think sometimes Bethesda gets to smoke in areas where I'm like, I don't really get it, or I didn't experience that, but I don't disrespect that people have their own experiences and they want to express those. But this is one of those things where I'm like,
Holy shit, this is probably like the most evolved take I have seen from a Bethesda fanboy. People are allowed to have their own opinions and experiences. Holy. I mean, this is evolution. Oh god damn, Darwin was right.
if we're going to complain about anything about Bethesda, I feel like this is one of them. Like, the next-gen update for Fallout 4 just being abandoned after breaking the experience for a lot of people. And, like, that's where I play Fallout 4 the most. I play it on PC. I have, like, 400 hours on PC. You know, I have my Platinum Trophy run on PlayStation 4, so that's done with. I have my console mods run that was on my Xbox. It's really my PC where I do most of my playing for Fallout 4. And I don't do that as much anymore. I used to play Fallout 4 pretty often, but I haven't touched it since the next-gen update, which I think should have been a bit of the opposite. So, rambling a bit at this point, but yeah,
To be honest, $400 in 10 years is not that much, but you know, I mean, I can't really complain, right?
just, again, this is where I start to mount it a bit of like, there's a consistent pattern here. And then the last part is a bit of a double-edged sword. We're going to talk a bit about Starfield. So, Starfield, one of the problems out the gate for that game was when they brought creations in. I saw the vision Bethesda was going for, which is like they've done before. Like, let's let the community support our game, but we're going to do so in a more official way. Now, they had some speed bumps like, hey, these are shutting off achievements, so I don't want to mess with these. They made things more achievement friendly. But really at the heart of the issue for people with creations was pricing, as it's always been since they introduced this back in like 20.
What do you mean? Are you saying people are not happy with a $10-15 DLC by Bethesda that adds roughly 20 to 30 minutes of gameplay? How could people ever be not happy with that? And the reward for doing that is you get a weapon that's bugged and can't be reloaded? What? What? That's insane. Who would have ever expected that?
2018, and Starfield was the worst it had been in that case because Bethesda was selling a $7 quest called the Vulture, which was 20 minutes long, and then the free quest they gave out in June announcing all of this stuff was like an hour long, and it just didn't make sense. It wasn't consistent. It was something I asked.
It was a bait. This was absolute. We talked about this. This was bait, okay? One part of the quest was for money, and again, it wasn't $7. You needed to buy a $15 pack of in-game currency to get it. Otherwise, well, sorry, sucks to suck. But yes, okay. So the first part of the DLC was for free. And it actually had some, well, it wasn't great, but at least it was a story-ish kind of when you looked at it, and it was kind of something. And then they were okay. Now the conclusion to all of this, you have to pay up Buttercup, and well, that was roughly a $1 to minute played exchange, and it was bad. It was boring. There was no choice. It's just okay. This is it.
Todd Howard about in our interview, and he did say they were going to make changes. And so this is the first time I dove into creations to just look at prices and quests, and I didn't admittedly play all of these, but I haven't found anything above 500 credits. It's really rare. Like I saw one quest that was 600, but otherwise, all of the quest creations under verified creators or anything from Bethesda Game Studios has arrived at under that price tag from the Vulture. So they did make that adjustment there, which I think is good to see. I think that is an improvement, and that is something that, you'd expect out the gate, but at least they are listening and reacting in certain cases. But what's happening is Starfield has been iced so hard in this last kind of stretch since October that even prominent modders are abandoning, I think, core mods that Bethesda.
A lot of people, a lot of modders didn't even want to play this because when Todd Howard, by the way, was selling Starfield as the most mod-friendly game ever. Yeah, again, Todd Howard lies about literally anything and everything. It turned out every modder just came out and said, "Yes, Starfield is the most modder unfriendly thing Bethesda has ever done by a landslide. It is actually almost anti-modder how bad modding in this game is. And that's hilarious, obviously.
the game studios, whether they know it or not, rely on. And we know that Bethesda said at the top of this year that the reason they're being quiet is they got a lot they're working on. I'll believe it when I see it. Like, I think part of that is going to be the PS5 port for Starfield. We know there's at least a year 2 expansion coming for Starfield this year. I don't know what they're going to do with it because my theory is like you got to try to do what Shattered Space did, but just better, because I think that's the only way Starfield crawls back into the conversation, that or just a complete overhaul of the core game. But I don't.
But Shattered Space did but better. Shattered Space had absolutely no players attached to it. Let me bring up the graph. Starfield Steam DB. Let's go, boys. Okay, so we currently have 2K people playing Starfield. Okay, let me share the screen. There you go. Look at this beauty. 330,000 player peak. And now 24 hours peak is less than 4K. First of all, that is amazing. Now let's make this graph a little bit longer. And I think this was the DLC. And as you can see, it's pitiful. It is absolutely pitiful. This is the release, but I wonder why there's Starfield Shattered Space. Is there a thing for that? Okay, actually, there is. Starfield Shattered Space. You can't really do anything. Anyway, 30% people are happy with this. 5K reviews. That little. That's kind of insane, honestly. Position review. Hmm. Franchise Starfield. Okay, let's click on this. And yeah, it's not even funny. You know how many people my estimate is to return to Starfield Shattered Space when the expansion dropped? And keep in mind, Starfield Shattered Space, the first expansion, was given to everyone for free almost who bought the game in the pre-order. Okay? I think Starfield Shattered Space got less than 6% of the player base to return. That is horrendous. That is absolutely horrendous. Typically, a DLC, even for the worst games, gets like 20% of the people who bought the game to buy the DLC and at least check it out. Starfield, with its DLC being free for most people, still could not even get 6% of their player base to return. That is abysmal. That is so abysmal.
Don't get any indication that Bethesda could do that in just like a few months of work. But there's just a lot of ways they could take Starfield. But the hope has waned for most people. When you look at the player count of Starfield compared to really any Bethesda Game Studios game, it's just not close. And I think Starfield can get there, but they need to be more active in its support and the communication about what's going on, and if they're actually going to make some fixes. Because, for example, there is an unofficial Starfield patch mod that now Games Radar is covering, saying in a post on the Starfield modding Discord, Starfield community patch modder Picky Source sends a message to players who had noticed the mod hadn't been updated since last September. The user announces that the team is looking for modders who want to take the reins from them, as the current creators don't have the time or motivation to curate the patch anymore. While Picky Source personally puts his absence down to a new puppy, which has reduced his gaming time, and certainly I can relate to that, the modders explain other members of the team have found themselves disenchanted with the game for various reasons. Lack of replayability, the paid modding situation, moved on to playing.
By the way, the lack of replayability for Starfield, the game with New Game Plus, is insane. Also, again, what was the point of adding New Game Plus in Starfield? There's no point in that. Just make a new fucking character.
New games, etc. Although they aren't working on the mod, Picky Source says they are still going to maintain the website, but admits if nobody comes forward, we may have to retire the project and direct users to Arth Moore's patch going forward, in reference to the unofficial Starfield patch. This is significant in my eyes, because this is something that happened out the gate. There were modders who just looked at what Starfield was offering and said that it can't support what we want to do with the product, and so they moved on. Now you have the modders who did hang with it, and there's not that excitement.
And no one cares.
And there's not that hype, that drive, but more importantly, the engine that makes these modders tick, passion. It is a currency in this industry, whether big publishers, developers want to admit it or not.
Yeah, there's effectively the best part. I think Starfield needs to have one more expansion, okay? Listen, if House Varun, the most stupidest fucking lore dump that you have ever seen in your life, did not cut it to you, I think that there's supposed to be like one more expansion for Starfield, probably. And it's just gonna get worse. There's no way it goes up. It only goes down from here, okay? And that's hilarious. Anyway, that was Mr. Matty Plays, 10 out of 10. Bye!